Plus, Ultra presents The Grey Lodge, not Friday Night Gnostic Mass, but a 3-part miniseries on the sorceress and sinister traditions of Southeast Asia. Yes, that is triple S. I'm your host, Jin the Ninja. I host a show called Threshold Saints, and we are a group chat, roundtable, group show on the nature of meta magic, speculative ontology, speculative tantra, kal chakra, as I like to say, speculative Kabbalah, and of course, speculative Gnosticism. That's kind of the thread that ties our whole space together. So we came together. We've had a couple mix-ups, but pretty much we are aligned with our crew that we have tonight, which is, of course, I'm joined by Eros Up. Solar is out doing spooky things in the great forests of Wisconsin, and Joshua is still at work, but he will be joining us. So I'm very excited to first introduce our sorry, Eros. I'm very excited to introduce, of course, our fellow co-host, my fellow lodge member, my fellow content creator, someone who I met working on Occult Rejects. Shout out Nick, who I see in the chat. Maybe he's here, maybe he's not. I don't know, but I appreciate that he dropped in with some emojis. Thank you, boss. Appreciate it. And so Eros is very quickly became my very good friend, as well as my compatriot in teaching all the boys about planetary, sort of like translating Kabbalah into the outer 3 planets. So Eros, please introduce yourself in any way that you want to and plug anything that you have that you want to say, and then we'll all kind of introduce a topic, and then we can discuss the book.
What's up, Jen? It's good
What
to be
is
here.
up?
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Let's see. I mean, I have my YouTube channel, Eros Up, but I don't really have anything that I want to plug necessarily tonight. So, but thanks for having me on. Hey, Nick, what's up?
Yeah, what is up, Nick? Thank you so much for setting up that. I won't even say, but it's like a big deal. We're gonna do something really fucking cool, like very classic reject style. So look out for that in the next, I want to say 3 weeks. It's not quite. It's like 2.5, but
well, and a big Ethan presentation tonight. It sounds like. So that's exciting.
Yeah. So if you obviously watch our live stream, but then as soon as you're done watching our live stream, go watch the Occult Rejects, and Ethan is giving a presentation, I believe, on the number 8 and sort of its many permutations in Tantra, as well as Daoism, as well as Western Hermeticism. So I'm sure he'll do a great job. And I forgot the podcast. I think is Divulgence Pod or I don't think it's Divergence. That doesn't sound right.
I think that's Sunday. I guess I'm not sure, but
okay. My apologies then. But anyways, everyone can go check that out. Of course, if you are looking for Eros's channel, her channel is, as with all the co-hosts, they each have their own links to Twitter, X. And so if you're new to the Grey Lodge, we started out as a Twitter space that was attracting hundreds and hundreds of people, pretty much, both live and in listen back. We would maybe get 1,000 listen sometimes, not every episode. Cassandra, we were just talking about you. Only good things. What's up? Oh, Sunday Divulgence Pod. So everybody check that out. Thank you, Nick. Sunday Divulgence Pod. Okay, so yeah, we started out as a group chat. We started out, it was just Solsky, me, and a couple other people. And then Joshua came really fast in. And I was just doing Aeon of the Daughter. That's strictly what I was doing. And then the group chat was doing book club. So we've done a return with a V, return to book club. And so Apophenion, the Peter Carroll book, will continue in 2 more parts next week. And then we'll have another episode on Thai magic, the next one will be on Witsa, so the Burmese sorcery. So we're going to do a 3-part miniseries. We're going to do Lersi. This is what tonight is. Then tomorrow, next week, we'll do Apophenion. Then the next week, we'll do Witsa. Then the next week, we'll finish Apophenion. Then the next week, we will do Dukun, which will be the sort of completion, which is the Indonesian version of a Lersi or a shaman. So we'll have completed like 3 big regions in Southeast Asia. So I think it'll be pretty cool. This seems to be a topic a lot of people are thinking about. And so it's a little different for us, but I have to say I've always wanted to do a series on this topic, like always, since I first started podcasting. I probably pitched it to Nick, to be honest, but there was a time where I felt very green and like nervous in my own sort of ways of articulating it. And I'm not an expert and I'm not Thai. So, but I can speak a little Thai. So I will probably not speak Thai, but I'll probably pronounce things properly. So, I guess that's how we'll start. Sorry, I'm a little nervous doing like the lives. Doing the spaces seems so much more gonzo. That's the truth. Like, it was just like more like rock and roll, like let's fucking go. Like we're just just out here on the aether wave. But I will say, like, we are a speculative space. Everything we say is speculative. We come together in consent. We come together. When we used to live on X, I used to say we used to come together on the app that is both the 10 and the 11, since the Wheel of Fortune can be both the 10th and the 11th tarot, depending on your system. So I always thought that was really interesting, as well as the Roman numeral X can also mean the 10 and the 11, depends. So yeah, we come together in like those kind of ideals to look at speculative wisdom science, which is perfect for tonight, and I'll get into why that is. But really, it's important that people try and take it in a non-dual, bodhicitta, middle path framework. We're not defending particular practices. We're not endorsing them, and nor are we decrying them or, casting aspersions. We're just discussing. We might reference the Peter Jenks book, which everybody sort of peripherally at least read, as well as the Esoteric Theravada book. And then I sent them another academic PDF is an older book from the 70s on, it's called Sorcery in Southeast Asia. So it has like a section on all the 3 different kinds that we're going to be discussing. Of course, I am Southeast Asian, so I do have a little knowledge. I was raised around Thai amulets my whole life. People who've listened to me on Threshold Saints maybe have heard me discuss that, or maybe have just heard me discuss this kind of syncretic religion called Kabatinan, which plays a big part in like my understanding of magic now, because I recognize so much of what I have come to learn in that system. So it's a syncretic system from Indonesia. Obviously, we'll touch on it when we do the Dukun episode. But tonight, we are going to do Thailand, one of my favorite places. I think a lot of people really love Thailand, and I think a lot of Westerners are very fascinated by the sorcery traditions. Now, there are several quite good books. Peter Jenks is obviously the classic. He lives in northern Thailand. That is pretty much the subject of the first book. So it's a 2-part book. I think there's actually 3 parts now, but I read the first 2. And so the first book deals with Lana magic. Lana magic is the magic of northern Thailand. So people who are typically darker skinned, people who are more related to people like Laotians and Cambodians. So the magic from that, or the sorcery, I'm going to use my language. So the sorcery or the Tantra from that region is actually a little wilder, a little more jungle, as they would say, and a little more, it has a lot of Buddhist elements. And so this will be a constant sort of discussion. I know the Solar's not here to sort of like talk about like formations of Dharma, but Eros is here, and that always is like really great and generative for me. So I'll just have to try and ask her questions that I think she'll be able to answer, or she can ask me questions that she thinks that I'll be able to answer in at least an interesting way. And pretty much that's it. So Dharma runs throughout this whole series. This will be like a more Dharma paused series in the sense that, Buddhism is not what people think it is. And I'm not saying that Buddhism is sorcery. Obviously, Tantra is sorcery. So Tantra can be Buddhist, obviously, Vajrayana, but not just Vajrayana. So one of the reasons why we sort of looked, at least the people, Eros and several other people from the lodge looked over the Esoteric Theravada book is because it sort of lays out like a historiography, excuse me, of Thai magic, and not just Thai magic, but sort of the Buddhist magic as it was originally pre-Reformation. So yes, there was a equivalent Reformation in all the colonial countries, and as well as Thailand, which is famously never colonized. So all of the Theravadan quote unquote countries, if people are unfamiliar, Theravada just means the sort of Thai monks. So if you see monks in Thailand wearing the saffron robes, they practice Theravada Buddhism, and their script language is Pali. So Pali is considered to be their sacred language, but it's not the only magic language that they use, in fact. And we'll get into that when we talk about sakyants, which are the magic tattoos, which everybody loves, as well as the payant. So a payant is the cloth with the magic squares, just like the tattoos, but they'll be on a cloth instead. So people will hang them and give offerings to them. If it's a Lersi, you can see I have a grandpa Lersi. This is the main pra Lersi. So the guy who's smoking, he is the main Lersi. So he's like he's not the king, but kind of the king. But in one way of understanding, you could say he represents Brahma. So people will be surprised to hear me say that, who is very famously anti-theist in a way. I'm not really anti-theist, but I'm post-theistic. So, but this is not really the tantric understanding. And then people will also wonder why I'm using the word tantric. Well, I'm a tantric Buddhist. So my initial, I think, inquiry into Southeast Asian magic definitely has been looking at the transmission of this esoteric Theravada, which is obviously not quite the same as Tibetan Tantra, which is a Mahayana tradition. But I would posit that there is actually a parallel, a deep parallel. And in fact, I would say that they're not even distinct, really. That the focus on Sotel or liquid mercury, on metallurgy, on transgressive metals in particular, this is something really interesting from the Peter Jenks book, the making of Buddhist amulets. So we'll talk about that in a bit. But the making of Buddhist amulets, which uses transgressive metals, as well as the making of amulets using corpses, ghosts, fetal powder, graveyard dirt, as well as other things. There's a whole materia medica, so that's something really interesting. But just like we would use in Tantra, it's very similar. So they have lay practitioners, which is what a Lersi is. A Lersi is a lay practitioner of Witsa. So Witsa is the Pali or / Thai word or Thai pronunciation for the Sanskrit word Vidya. Vidya means wisdom. So Lersi practices Lersi is also a Sanskrit / Pali word for Rishi. Sorry, I couldn't think of it. For a Rishi, for a sage. But really, Lersi is a practitioner of Witsa. That just means wisdom science. That's really what it means. The translation into Sanskrit is a Vidyadhara. That literally means wisdom scientist, which is also why a Witsa does not have to be a wizard or a shaman. A Witsa can be an architect of like a famous architect or a famous scientist or a famous doctor, anything like that. That is also a Witsa. They are a master of their profession. But a Witsa in this context is also a Lersi. So I'll use probably Lersi, but that's not 100% applicable. That's not how they would all self-identify. So I said that there is like a tie-in with Theravada. All the sorcery practices, no matter how quote unquote transgressive they are seen from the West, which is not really a correct way of viewing it, which is why I say try and view it in a non-dual way. Obviously, people are going to have different ideas of what that means, but in general, I think that it's best to look at it as entwined with Buddhism rather than trying to parse out individuated components and say, oh, this is transgressive magic used by lay people, or this is the Buddhist sort of style of the same thing. No, I would say that it's a continuum. Most of it, 70%, is primarily informed by Buddhism. Of course, there is other influences. There is a huge Chinese presence in central Thailand. If people don't know, the Burmese sacked Ayutthaya, which was the former capital of Thailand, in the 1700s. But the way that the Thai king, the current leader of Thailand, the current king right now, he has a significant amount of Chinese ancestry. And the reason for that is because the court at the time of when the capital was overrun, they actually raised money from the Hokkien and Cantonese traders. The Cantonese and Hokkien traders actually had a settlement on which is now Bangkok. So you could almost say that Bangkok is fundamentally a Chinese city. I'm not saying it's like Chinese in like origin or it has specific ties to China, but a lot of its population, up to 70%, have significant Chinese ancestry, meaning a grandparent or more. So you would have to say that Daoism, and this plays out if you go to modern Bangkok, you can see they have tiger temples and Taoist temples, and we're going to get into tigers too, because that's a very interesting sort of crossover. But a lot of Taoist magic plays a big role in central Thai magic. Now, I said Peter Jenks's first book is about Lana magic, which is northern Thailand. Of course, that's true. But there's also southern Thai magic, which is more similar to Malaysian style or more similar to what are called sea people. So we won't really get into that tonight, but maybe we'll cover it when we discuss Burma. What else? I guess we'll start with saying, what is a Vidyadhara and what do they practice? So Vidyadhara is in the earliest of the Buddhist suttas. So this is not sutras. This is the suttas. This is written in Pali script. Okay. So as a person who preferences Sanskrit or Tibetan or Chinese, Pali is understood to be a creolized version of Sanskrit almost everyone universally believes this. So it is not the same quality of language as Sanskrit. This is a more, I guess, snobbish, tantric way to look at it, but I think it's valid. And I think that it also, but they make it work. They utilize Pali in a very specific way for katas, for prayers and chants and mantras. So this is another kind of linkage between Tantra and Witsa. So they understand, because of the nature of Thailand, which is obviously mostly coastal. There's obviously a lot of mountains, but it's there's been a trading port for a long, long time. So they've had Indians, many kinds of Indians. There's a Kali temple. There's many kinds of tantric temples actually all over Bangkok, and traditionally the royal families. This is historically, I'm saying all the dynasties would practice syncretic Hindu, Buddhist, sort of very thaumaturgical or theurgical sort of. It's kind of a ritualized magic. It's just like how you would see upper middle class or upper class Indians about 100 years ago. They each would have a personal Brahmin or a personal pujari, someone who performs rites, and they would have that as their family. So that's basically what the royal family had. They had a group of Brahmins, priests, who would perform pseudo-Vedic rites mixed with Upanishads and also like Puranic and Tantric Shastras as well, which is also why they're able to sort of recognize, or why I'm able to recognize a lot of Tantric elements. So, and then you have like this interchange that happened for 1,000 years. So you have this whole maritime region that was also partly the Silk Road. So you cannot really count the Silk Road just as existing in Central Asia. You have to understand the Silk Road as coming out of Bengal. So West Bengal, if you're looking at a map, it's in the, I'm trying to think, it's in the northeast corner of the India, right where the body of water, the Bay of Bengal is. And you can see there's a port there, Calcutta. Okay, well, where did traditionally, historically, did that port go? Well, that port went to Burma. So when they would get to Burma, or Rangoon, or Yangon, as it's now called, the capital, they would either do an overland They would either do an overland route to China, or they would continue onwards to the various ports in Malaysia, Burma, or not Burma, Thailand, and Indonesia. So they would kind of make various stops, and they would bring their religion along with them, and they would bring different ideas along with them. And as I said, Thailand really is a much more multi ethnic country than people understand. So that's really important to note, is that a lot of these traditions, like I disagree with Peter Jenks a little bit. Like I think it's a great book. I think he does a great ethnography. It was the one of the first like very complete sort of like interview style, which is what an ethnography is, obviously. Uh, if Solar's listening back, I don't want to, say anything unacademic. But anyways, the point is I think it's a great book, but I do disagree with him and when he calls things having their sort of historical animist um, traditions, which is true and not true. So I agree and disagree. So it's kind of interesting. But I agree that there are animistic elements. But as I said, I think it's very, very entwined with their kind of Buddhism. Now, the original historical Buddha, Gautama Buddha, he was said to have trained with all these ajarns, all these rishis, all these Vidyadharas, all these wisdom scientists, wisdom masters, many of whom would have practiced magic. That is the reality. I'm not talking about Vedic magic. I'm talking about sort of a pre-Buddhist kind of like forest tradition that was drawing on the Hinduism. Well, it wasn't called Hinduism, but it was the popular sort of religion and Vedas at the same time. But it was also drawing on the AshtaBhairavas, which are the magical component to pretty much all. It's basically how it's where magic really comes from, in the sense of what people call Tantra a lot of the time is actually not tantric knowledge. It's from the AshtaBhairavas. Of course, there is a tantric meaning, inner outer secret. So I believe that a lot of this knowledge was preserved in Southeast Asia. And Peter Jenks also makes this argument that the wisdom, the vidya, although he calls it vitsa, actually wants, like the vidya has its own animus. It actually wants to be rediscovered. And in one of the interviews in the book, I forget, excuse me, I forget which ajarn it is. Ajarn just means a teacher or a master. So anyone who's a practicing Lersi, a lay person, not a monk, they are called an ajarn. But also, monks can be called ajarn. So it gets confusing a little for other people. But it just means a master. So it just means someone who has completed a sort of protocols to become to practice Witsa, to become a Lersi. So basically, I forgot where I was going with that, but I was saying, okay, there's this really interesting point in the book, yeah, where they say that the wisdom wants to reemerge. So I think that that is true, and I think this is also very Buddhist, because I've always posited Dharma is an axialist sort of religion. It will have axialist elements. Of course, Tantra is sorcery, so why cannot then be Vidyadhara or Witsa also be Tantra? I think that's very fair. I think it's just a different version. I think they understand things a little differently, but I don't think it's actually different. It maybe just is distinct. But of course, going back to the animist element, now, I don't think that the ghost worship and the forest spirit or the fairy spirit, which Peter Jenks goes very in depth in, he gives the names of several banana fairies. That's what they're called. We would call it a kuntilanak or a pontianak in Malay or Bahasa, but they call it they call them Mainak. That's the famous one. That's not the only one. There are many of them, and so different practitioners will invoke different banana fairies. Now, when people say, "Oh, I want to," Western practitioners will say, "Oh, I want to, play with the banana fairy in my house in, I don't know, Asheville." Well, there's an idea that they are also like deeply connected to their tree of origin or their grove of origin. If you've ever listened to me on Rejects, you will have heard me many times discuss or bring up, at least raise the idea of the Matrika grove rites. So this comes right out of Central Asian Tantra. This idea of sort of fairies, sky fairies, and sky wives, and not that they're the same. They're not all dakinis. Now, they can be called dakinis, but these are yakshinis. These are ferocious, blood drinking, not always blood drinking. And we'll get into this too, because I think this is a really interesting point about Thai magic and its kind of Buddhist intermingling. But a lot of these yakshinis, which are just nature spirits, that's just what it means. Sometimes it is translated as fairy, though. So I'm not trying to, um, complicate matters. This is just a common way that in Chinese and Thai, in Bahasa, and all the languages, this is how it's commonly translated as a fairy. Now, that might not be 100% correct, according like depending on someone's like or their worldview or their cosmology, but it's a term that I'm comfortable with for Yakshini, which really means the spirits of the trees, spirits of the river, the spirits of certain like a stone or a tree. I said a tree, but like sometimes a lone tree because I was referring to groves. So there is an idea of like a hierarchy of spirits also, where these kind of yakshinis that are propitiated and they'll make them paper mache statues and shrines. Like if you're familiar with any of the curanderismo or brujeria of the southern United States, like Texas, California, northern Mexico, um, or even the southern Mexican cults, like everybody knows that I kind of have a little, like I think he's very guapo, is San Mashimon or San Simon, who also smokes a cigarette. So we'll have to also discuss the sort of ritual use of smoking and tobacco, because I think that's a really important note. But it's very similar to that, is what I'm trying to say. Like Santa Muerte or San Simon, um, they will have set up shrines for them. Now, how to enshrine these things? Well, you need a ritual master, a master of rites. And I guess I didn't really explain that very well when I was discussing Brahmins. But Brahmins were our sort of Vedic masters. They're supposedly masters of Vedic ritual worship. Obviously, if you follow me, you know that I believe, and it's not that I believe, it's functionally and materially true, is that the rites have degraded. Those kind of Vedic rites, like it's been thousands of years, people don't quite know how to put them together. I'm not degrading them, I'm not putting them down, but you have to understand that when I'm saying Vedic, I don't want people to think like, oh, Aryan steep kings. That's not what this is. This is a kind of royal householder tradition of the Thai kings. And so it's very syncretic because it reflects different changes in Thai society rather than saying, oh, it's just like a rigid, it's like it's has the historical links to the Vedas, so it must be exactly Vedic. This is true and not true, as I said. So there's a deep incorporation of these banana fairies, of Chinese ghosts worship. This is a big deal in Thailand, and maybe this is like a functional point of sort of Thai understanding of the cause of the multiverse or of samsara. Is that Chinese people are very into like ancestor veneration and ghost worship are sort of the primary fundamentals of like Chinese religion. Like whether you're talking Buddhism, Daoism, or Confucianism. So you will definitely be hitting, hey, Holleratador. I think your name's Adrian. I want to say Adrian or Damien. Anyways, it doesn't matter. But hey, what's up, buddy? Thanks so much for coming. Appreciate you. Anyway, so so during Qingming, which is August, I know I'm sort of jumping all over. I'm kind of like, Dorian. Sorry about that, Dorian. I was kind of close, but I knew it was something like that. But okay, Dorian, got you. I won't forget ever again. I appreciate it. So the Chinese rites really culminate, ghost worship rites really culminate in August, which is called Qingming, which is the ghost festival. So the great brightness festival to lead the ghosts with the candles and incense and offerings, to lead the ghosts back to the human world so they can feel edified that their ancestors, descendants, excuse me, still worship them and still take care of them. So all Thai Chinese or Chinese Thais, I don't know how they do it. Every different country has a different way that they say. I think in Thailand they say Thai Chinese. So we'll go with that. That might be wrong. I apologize if it is, but from what I remember, it's Thai Chinese. So, anyways, they do this every August. You'll see hundreds of families, thousands of families go out to the Chinese cemetery, and they will do like the ghost offerings and all of that stuff. So what I'm saying is that even regular Thais who might not identify as ethnically Chinese, they will also they have also their own kind of ghost and spirit rites. You will see this often with Fanta, red Fanta, strawberry flavored Fanta, which I don't know if they sell commonly in the US or in North America, but yeah, I don't know. Anyways, they will leave this out for the spirits. Why? Because it is red like blood, but it is sugary. So it is said to be able to quench the thirst of hungry ghosts who aren't necessarily able to eat regular food. Very important. In Buddhism, when you give ghost offerings, they must be highly fragrant, highly sweet, highly the flavor must be very strong and pungent, those kinds of things. But you generally don't give ghosts pungent foods like garlic, chilies, um, those kinds of things, because those things make the ghosts more rajasic, more hungry, and more tamasic, more angry. So you're supposed to give them sattvic offerings. Now, this is not 100% true, as Peter Jenks lays out. So there's a time when the Lersi, so maybe we should get into this, what like the grouping of Lersis. So this is more of central time magic, Bangkok surrounding area magic. But the Lersis are a grouping of 108 or 72 or 81. So there can be different groupings. Well, as a tantric, immediately I recognize this thing as both a magic number, 108 is a magic Buddhist number, and but 81 and 72 are the numbers of the AshtaBhairavas. So if people are wondering, AshtaBhairava, that means 8 ferocious kings. Yes, there are 8, but there are actually 9, because who is the ninth? Well, the ninth is time, Kala Bhairava, the ferocious time king. He has 8 movements in the world, which are sun, moon, fire, earth, air, water, void, death, and of course, time. So there's 9. But each of those 9 kings express, just as the ninth king expresses himself into 8 dances, that's what it's called, 8 dances of the universe. Um, each of those 8 kings also expresses themselves 9 times into the mandala, or into the world, you can say. So what does this mean? There is a both etymological and cosmological connection between the time kings, what people would understand from Nepal or India or Buddhist Tantra as the Mahakalas. I know I call them AshtaBhairavas, and it's slightly a different thing, but people don't really understand when I'm very pedantic about it. And it is important if you're trying to like actually practice the sadhanas. But for maybe our discussion, we'll just call them Mahakalas, greater time kings. Okay, they're not quite Mahakalas, but what I'm saying is that there's a relationship. There's even a relationship in the Thai word that they use. They call them pi, so that means like brother, ferocious king. So just like you can hear Pi Bhairab. So that means Bhairava. Exactly the same. It's just the Thai pronunciation. So they really understand them as being very distinctly related, directly related to the Bhairavas that come from Nepal. So different Lersis, different Ajans will have different ways of worshiping the Lersis. Some of them have tiger face. This is people follow me on Twitter. You will know that this is the one that I like. That I tend to post him a lot. So the tiger faced Bhairava is a very important Bhairava for many reasons. Maybe we won't get into like all the secret root meanings, but he's a very powerful Lersi. But anyways, he's just one of 108 or 72 or 81. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. It's just like a magic number. But most people will worship a grouping of them. Maybe one, maybe their focus will be on one. And that will also determine the kind of magic that they are a specialist in. Now, when I say magic, I'm not necessarily talking about like gross acts of magic, like, oh, this person will be like a love specialist, or this person will be like a black magic specialist. Like, yes, that might be true as well. But I'm also talking about the fundamental paths, the margas of the Bhairavas. So the tiger face Lersi, he's mainly what kinds of practices he's associated with is metallurgy, which they're all kind of associated with. They all have a very close relationship, since this is the kind of tantra that they preference. Now, I am calling it tantra again, but again, there are so many Buddhist, like from Tibetan texts, that have the same practices. People don't believe me. you can go read, if you can, if you're able to, if you have the empowerment, go read the Dujam Tesser cycle or the Utak Inting. The Utak Inting will be the most interesting in one way because it actually explains the story of how to find quicksilver in nature, which is a big part of both Buddhist and like a lay people magic, like a Jarn magic. Okay. So, where was I? Okay, so there are 108. They all have different faces. Some of them have animal faces. This is also exactly the same as it is in Nepal. Exactly the same, no difference. The animals might be changed a little bit. That's not a big deal. If you follow me or follow my show or follow the Grey Lodge, you will know that we've talked about this sort of transmission from Central Asia into East Asia and then other places, and how sometimes the animals will get readapted to fit local conditions. Just like with the Dakini, the fox goddess Dakini, who is important in Thailand, interestingly, and brought by the Chinese diaspora. But the fox Dakini and Maynok also gets syncretized with the fox Dakini. So sometimes Maynok, who's usually propitiated for wealth and love, and sometimes children, she sometimes is depicted as riding a fox. Now, this is a much newer, this is kind of from the 60s, from some famous movie that I have seen, but I forgot the name of. It's been a long time. But anyways, how she originally was a goddess of doles. So these little kind of forest dogs who hunt in packs. But in Eastern China and Japan and Korea, they don't have doles. They might have doles, but they're not common, and they're very elusive animals. So a dole looks almost identical to a fox. So if you are bringing a practice over and you're just a lay practitioner or even a monk, and you see a statue or you see a tonka and you see these little, or you're reading a tantra and it's saying, oh, she's surrounded by doles. And the word in Sanskrit is just like some kind of forest dog. Well, if you live in a more temperate climate, you're going to immediately think of a fox because that's exactly how it would be described: reddish, cackling. Anyways, it doesn't matter, but they translated that into foxes. So that what I'm saying is that sometimes you will see animal-headed Lersi that are different than the Nepali or the Buddhist or the Tibetan versions. Or the Indian versions even. That's totally fine. We can even account for that. I won't get into that maybe today, but it'll be an interesting note to sort of continue on for the 3-part series. So the animal-headed ones each have a different meaning. So we'll just talk about it really. I'll do 3 that I know. So this one is Grandpa. I don't remember his proper name. I could look it up. I have the Peter Jenks book open. I'm being like, I'm not nervous, but I'm trying to go with the flow, stream of consciousness, like old Grey Lodge, vintage Grey Lodge style. So okay, so this is the Grandpa Lersi. He does everything. He teaches all the things. He's like the guru. That's how you can think of it as well, like a kind of Mahasiddhi, a Mahasiddha. That's exactly what we could think of them as well, not just the AshtaBhairavas, but also the Mahasiddhas. So these are tantric masters, Vidyadharas. We even call them that in Sanskrit, Vidyadhara. So a wisdom master, but they are Mahasiddhas, meaning they have reached the great accomplishment, meaning they have magic powers, basically. So all of the Lersi also have magic powers. So this one in front of us, I'm sorry, Grandpa, I forgot your name, but he provides its protection. It is to keep the spirits in line, like any spirits that you might deal with, like that are not the Lersi, ghosts. He does everything. He does all kinds of magic. And as I said, can also be understood. A lot of Thais will understand him as a kind of incarnate form of Brahma, so meaning the king of the gods in a way. So, but he isn't just the king of the gods, right? Because they're Buddhist. So they're saying it's not cosmological, it's ontological, meaning that he is Brahma, the king of the gods, descended to earth to become a Lersi, to become a Thai shaman, to become like a forest master of like Buddhist sorcery of Thailand or Asia, Southeast Asia. So he is kind of like he's kind of doubly apotheosis. He's undergone a double apotheosis, is what I'm saying. He's not just a god anymore. He's actually becoming, he's on his path, his marga, to become a Buddha. So he covers all the range of human conditions, basically. And then there's the tiger face one. His power is primarily magnetization. Now, that doesn't not mean just draw people in. No, in Tantra, this has a deeper meaning. Magnetization can also be power over your enemies, right? And he also provides protection, very strong protection, which is why you will often see the tiger face Lersi on policemen, on Muay Thai boxers, as well as criminals. I'm not saying that he's a criminal, he's not a criminal protector deity specifically. And they have other ones that they preference, which we'll get into maybe. But he is propitiated by people who might encounter death or danger in their everyday life. So that's really his office. Power over your enemies, power over black magic, and he brings you a lot of women or whatever. So basically that's tiger, but then you'll also see ones like deer face. Deer face is rare now because of his powers. So his powers are over dreams, illusions, mental magic, Jedi mind tricks, you might want to call it. So basically, his powers are primarily lunar. And there's multiple stories as to why this is. Like each one has like planetary and astrological associations. I'm not super familiar with it. I could map it out. I could sit down and do it. Like I could intellectually do it. Probably need Eros's help, but I could do it. But the reality is that that part of the sort of tantric understanding of the Lersis, that's not in Peter Jenks's book, and that's not in really any of the books. Now, they do preserve certain ideas of the lunar cycles, of certain protocol ritual protocols, and it's not just black magic. Now, of course, there is what Peter Jenks calls like a sort of jungle voodoo. That's his exact words. That is more Cambodian or Laotian. That's true, and even Thais would tell you that that's true. Wind deer. Oh, yeah, I agree. When is the deer? Oh, right, I didn't finish the thing about the deer. I apologize. So the deer, let's finish him. So he's very lunar, right? He has the powers of it's very subtle powers of dreaming, of so he can put one of the things that a Lersi who's devoted to the deer face shaman, he can do is he can go into people's dreams. He can influence people's dreams so they dream of specific people or have specific thoughts. That's also he can do that in the waking time too, because he can subtly influence people's mental state. Very lunar. So, but in the modern time, this is not as popular, right? People want more gross boons, like more, they want riches, they want pregnancy, they want material, it's material concerns. That's what most people are concerned about. And then obviously you'll have a subset who are interested in like things like exorcism or things like ghost magic. And so this is a distinction that Peter rightfully makes, where I fully agree with him is that most of these rites, even except with the exception of the jungle magic from Lao and Cambodia, the Khmer magic, we'll call it generally, broadly, or the Lana magic, even the Northern Thai magic has some overlap with this jungle voodoo. They do not always use the Buddhist sort of framework and methodologies. This is actually considered very dangerous, even by the practitioners themselves, because the ghosts are very dangerous. The ghosts and the spirits, of the kind of spirits, including the Yakshinis, but not just them. There are demons, mountain gods, various ogres, gremlins, imps, various things in the cosmology. Of course, we can account for all of these things in Tantra. All of those things are yakshas to a degree, just different kinds of yakshas. So different kinds of nature spirits. So just like with the Greek, I'm sure it's very similar. I'm sure Eros is sort of annoyed that I'm not mapping it 100% correctly, but in general, the idea is very similar. But it's the worship of all these sort of like beings of the forest and the mountains. Um, they are dangerous. They are absolutely dangerous. This is not a joke. This is like any person will tell you. This is the reason why they have ajans. This is the reason why they have Lersi. This is the reason why the monks can perform, some monks at some watts can perform magic or sorceress rites because of the inherent danger. Buddhism actually gives you a fortitude, a protection. This is how it's understood, even by the jungle voodoo people. They understand that not including the Buddhist sort of frameworks and the Lersi and the sort of protections of the Pali suttas and all the additional sort of like Buddhist tantric knowledge, they understand that that actually increases the difficult pisahachas. There you go. Pisahachas. Dorian just said that in the chat, so I'll answer that. I'll even put it up. Sorry, Dorian, I'm not used to doing lives just yet, but we're going to work on it. Okay, what do I think of Pisahachini's gin? Well, it's very interesting that you say that. Well, first of all, we should identify and define what a Pisahachini or a Pisahacha is. People in the West probably have no real comparable to it, except that you could call it a thought form. That is a perfectly fine way to understand a Pisahacha. Now, it's not just a thought form from a single person or even from a human. A Pisahacha is a thought form and pieces, aggregates of different ghosts, demons, bad vibes, negative thoughts, pollution, um, anything. It kind of gathers together in a great black mass, not black mass, but you know what I mean, like a great cloud of miasma. Watch Inuyasha. When they talk about like going to Moroku's mountain, the mountain is surrounded by the purple miasma. That you can say that when the miasma sort of gains consciousness, gains sentience as a singular consciousness, then it becomes a Pisahacha. So it's a formation of like all these negative qualities in the world as well as spirits, but they're not individuated. They're a single like entity, and they're very powerful. Very powerful, even in Tibetan Tantra, even in Indian Tantra. These are considered to be one of the hardest things to exercise, one of the hardest things to subjugate, and one of the hardest things to work with. Right. So Dorian is saying, I'll put it up. I found sadhanas for them to be too chaotic for me at this point. So it's really interesting that you say this because most of the tantric sadhanas are actually very chaotic. They cause a lot of chaos in people's lives, even ones that are considered to be Anuttara Yoga, higher level tantras. They can cause a lot of discord. They can cause a lot of turmoil in people's lives because they're not really meant for worldly things. Now, Pisahachas or Pisahachinis, which is just the feminine version, there are enlightened ones. So one of the famous ones is I'm forgetting her name. I don't know why. Parnashavari. Sorry about that. Parnashavari. So Parnashavari is a mountain ogress. So she originally was a Pisahachini, meaning this aggregate thought form of component of all these different monsters, demons, gods, ghosts, humans, human consciousness, like all these negative thoughts, all of it. So she is ritually subjugated by, I believe it's Padmasambhava, but it could be another wisdom master, another Vidyadhara. So she becomes subjugated and they bring her into the Dharma as the goddess of plagues. Now, it's very interesting because in India and in Indian, sort of we'll call it Shakta, which is the goddess tradition, they actually worship a sort of analog to Parnashavari. And in fact, Parnashavari is mentioned many times in this goddess's text. This is not a tantric text, but this is kind of an outer ritual Shakta worship. So Shatala Devi is the goddess of smallpox. She rides a donkey. She holds a pot of neem water and a neem leaf or neem like wand. It's kind of like a frond. Yeah, frond. It's a frond. And so she dips the neem leaf into the water and she sprinkles it on people who have smallpox or any of those kinds of communicable plague diseases. So what's interesting is that she also causes those plague diseases. That's kind of her thing, is she brings the disease, but she also cures it. So like treats like. So basically in Indian religion, Shakta, well, we will call it broadly Hinduism, although that's not really the right term or even a real thing. She is a demoness or an ogress, and she is worshipped as a goddess, which is perfectly fine. But then it also calls into question like what people are calling gods. And so it sort of proves me right in a way, or not proves me right. I think that it actually, the way I've always articulated it is anything can be a god. It depends on like how many people worship it, how many people believe in it, how do they worship it, what texts are they following, is it historical, is it contemporary, and that's it. It doesn't matter about someone's placement in the hierarchy. But so Buddhism actually posits that she gets subjugated. So that's really important for us because she would be too dangerous to actively cultivate as a sadhana. So during COVID, this was a really important idea, is that a lot of people took, including myself, Parnashavari empowerments online so we could like pray the COVID away. I'm not saying that that's what people should do or that's like how people should think of it. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that in a tantric magical sort of worldview, that this would be the sadhana to protect you from communicable disease. So that's basically what a Pisahacha is. It doesn't have to be that goddess, doesn't have to be Parnashavari, but she is a very old tantric goddess, like one of the older ones actually. So a mountain demoness or a mountain ogress, depending on your translation, but she is classified as a Pisahachini. So she gets subjugated and brought into Dharma. So they have spirits like this too. And you could argue that the Lersi, some of the animal face shamans that are worshipped as gurus and Vidyadharas, wisdom kings, they also possibly were subjugated like Brahma, like the grandpa with the cigarette right in front of us. He was sort of subjugated, but his subjugation story is different. His subjugation actually occurred in a discourse. So he spoke with the Buddha. This is even in the Pali Suttas. He speaks with the Buddha, and the Buddha uses the Buddhist words, which are, of course, magical. Even if Pali is a corruption, even if Pali is a Creole, it doesn't really matter. Buddha uses the words, which is what Buddha's name means, the speaker. He uses the words to subjugate Brahma in his mind, not necessarily magical, but yes, he's forming a karmic connection with Buddhist Dharma just by Brahma hearing the words. So then Brahma would endeavor in a very this is a very Mahayanist way of thinking, but Brahma would endeavor to come down to earth, learn the wisdom sciences, help humanity, and then he can continue on his marga of becoming a Buddha. So you could say that, as I said, that's one. It's a very valid way to understand. That's how a lot of Thai Chinese would understand this figure. And as I said, there's a lot of Thai Chinese there. So, so we talked about that. Okay, is this the same as Karna Pisahachini? Yes and no. Yes and no. That's a sort of subcategory of Pisahachini. But you could say that certainly some of the Maynok or the ghost spirits. I'm not talking about the banana fairies. I'm talking about the kind of Chinese influenced. Maybe they're rural Thai, but they're ghosts. It's definitely ghosts. They're not necessarily they're not banana fairies. They're ghosts, like the spirits of dead people. Now, when I'm saying that there are dead people, all of their mythologies are aggregated, meaning that they're all composite tales. You will have certain stories in northern Thailand, like the Lana. We're talking about the Peter Jenks book, so he's talking about Lana, northern Thai magic. They will have a Minoc myth that is different, maybe just by several degrees, maybe just like with several details that they will add to that sort of worship of that spirit. But in southern Thailand, they will have different stories, maybe a different village. They will say that, oh, she was a daughter of this village. So they will sort of claim her for that, and they will assign her like maybe just like slightly differing attributes or a slightly differing mythology. So that, in one way of thinking, in a very Buddhist way of thinking, that is a composite. You're creating a composite thought form by adding to their mythology, by expanding out their story, by not having it be a single unified sort of mytho poem or whatever. It's not a clear cut thing. It's like everybody sort of takes of it, changes it, adds a little thing here, remixes it there. And so I think that's a really important note, is that by adding this narrative sort of layer where you're adding all these parafictional elements, and they're not necessarily even that they are parafictional. Every village in Thailand probably has a story about an actual person, an actual woman whose husband goes off to the war and she dies in childbirth. Anyways, I should have probably led with that, but that's what a Maynok spirit is. So I'm more saying as a category of spirit, it's a category of pregnant woman's spirit who cannot leave this world because of love. She loves her husband, so he comes back from the war. This is how all the stories go. He comes back from the war and his wife is living there like no problem at all. But he notices that the other villagers cannot see or interact with her. Only he can. Well, at least this is one of the stories. So he realizes that she's actually a ghost and their kid is a ghost. And basically, always sadhana, never happy hana. I do like that. Uh, but so he realizes that his wife is a ghost. Well, so the story is kind of always a sad one, but then she gets elevated to this kind of semi deity who is worshipped, as I said, for pregnancy, for money, for men. If you're a woman, you go to, well, mostly men. I mean, mostly women pray to her for men, but yeah, there's definitely other, we'll call them third gender categories that might be interested in may not, because that is the truth, because they are in Thailand. So, um, anyways, and for, yeah, for those things, it's like it's very worldly, as I said, but she gets elevated into this sort of space of a deity, but she's really made up of all these different ghosts. And it's not just that it's a ghost, as in like a purely supernatural entity. That's not what a Pisahachini necessarily is. It doesn't have to be actual supernatural ghosts. Of course, you can understand it like that, but I think it's actually more tantric to understand them as being of the narrative layer, meaning that if the story is composite, the thought form itself is then composite. So I hope that answers your question, Dorian. Like, is this the same as Karna Pisahachini? No, Karna Pisahachini is a subcategory of like maybe lesser spirits, more. They have taken the form of a Dakini, basically, or a Vitali, a vampire, or a Preta, or a Bhuta, a zombie, or a ghost or ghoul on the carnal ground. So that's more what it is. They've taken an embodied form, whereas a Pisahachini doesn't necessarily have an embodied form. Now, they can, they can, they can inhabit like a tree, a shrine, a Buddha statue. This is the subject of a lot of Thai sort of folk tales, as well as Thai horror movies. Is that you are most welcome, Dorian. So the idea is that sometimes evil spirits, a Pisahachini or Pisahacha or a Yakshini or whatever it is, whatever category of being you want to put that it's classified as, they will inhabit stone statues, sacred trees, or shrines. You'll see this a lot in especially Lana, northern Thailand. You will see people have huge shrines under banyan trees. Now, of course, the Buddha sat under a banyan tree. So can you really divorce it from Buddhism? No, you can't. But you can also say, in one way of thinking, that yes, it's probably related to the kind of animist traditions that were around when the Buddha was around. So it's a continuation, but it's also like entwined. You can't separate it. So they will worship the ghosts who also gather under, or spirits, yakshinis. They will worship them and they will have different shrines. And as I said, they often put out Fanta, which is extremely sickly sweet and it's red. So it has that kind of blood connotation, but it's a dry offering. Now, you're going to ask, Jin, what is a dry offering? Well, I'm so glad you asked. A dry offering simply means that it is not a product of animal or contains blood, simply vegetarian. That doesn't mean it can't be liquid, as the Fanta is a liquid. It can be fruit. You will see oranges very frequently. This is clearly a Chinese sort of add in. You will see limes. This is a more Southeast Asian, very common throughout Southeast Asia, but also very common in Mexico and Latin America in general for doing limpias, cleansings. You cannot and for Saint Expedite, people don't know this, but Saint Expedite is very popular in parts of the Africa as well. Very popular in the Seychelles, Mauritius, and the Reunion Island. So they have a lot of Saint Expedite worship. Why am I bringing this up? Because one of the things that really got me interested in sort of the syncretism of Buddhist, like this kind of Southeast Asian Buddhist sorcery, is because a lot of the Latin American herbs are pantropicals, meaning that um, they're naturalized, or at least or even native, are all over the tropics, anywhere that there's a tropical place. Of course, this has to do with like colonialism and like how the spice trade and the pirates. It all of that mingles together, and of course, so that's part of it. But I started to notice very early on, like years and years ago, that the sort of Santeria, that hoodoo, that a lot of these different voodoo, that brujeria, curanderismo, all over Latin America and Central America, that the herbs they used were actually identical herbs. And I can even give example. There's a herb called fish mint, which is Chromoleana. I'm forgetting the full name, but anyways, it's one of the names for this herb is Christmas mint. Another name for this herb is herb du Laos or herb du Lao, which is the means in French the Laotian herb. So why would this be a very popular cleansing herb in Cuba? Well, it obviously probably, well, we'll say speculatively that this herb possesses extremely powerful cleansing properties. So this is also a very commonly used herb. Guinea hen weed is another herb that is very popular both in the Caribbean as well as in Southeast Asia. It's a pan-tropical herb. You'll see this time and time again. Why am I bringing this up? Because it ties in the limes and the Saint Expedite worship. You will utilize the herbs. Oh, and this is something I should also say about herbs. Herbs are primarily a Buddhist ritual technology. Peter Jenks lays this out really well in his Thai occult books 1 and 2, but it's primarily in 1, I think he discusses this, is that he says like the Buddhist white magic, and we have to get into the distinction for Thai people. This is just a speculative distinction that they make, but I actually adhere to it myself, so I think it's really interesting. But Buddhist sorcery is mostly differentiated, as I said in the very beginning, by the use, it does not use by the things it excludes, but it will include transgressive substances, including transgressive metals, and sometimes even human parts and ash. Now, I have to get into that later, but I'm talking about the primary way that Buddhist sorcery, Buddhist Witsa, is recognized, or Sayasan, which is also means magic. Well, I won't use that word. I'm going to use Witsa. Anyways, the primary way it's recognized is through the use of herbs. So that's why I bring up the limes, because limes are universally used as Olympia ingredient. Now, limes can also be used for quick action, quick movement in magic. This is exactly the same. You see this pan-tropically, both in Cuba and in Southeast Asia. So there's really no, there's no real disparity. I'm not like cross-culturally saying, oh, this is like, this is like something in the tradition and it's like this deep thing and it only can come from this. No, I think it's just recognition of something spiritual nature. So that's how I'm going to posit it. So I started recognizing these kind of overlaps with pan-tropical herbs and realized that, yeah, this is the Buddhist kind of magic that a lot of Thai people are at least familiar with through cinema, through like even what they think Thai monks do. Like not all monks practice magic. Like it's pretty rare to be like a full-on Witsa, to be a full-on Lersi, to be a full-on Ajarn in like in wisdom science, be a wisdom scientist. Not all monks do it, and not all monks do the same practices. There are specialists. There are tattoo specialists, Sakyan specialists. There are Payan specialists. There are yantra specialists, people who actually draw the numerical and geometric shapes that create sigils. There are people who invent new ones. There are ways to do it using the Burmese and the, Thai people always say jungle magic is stronger. But a lot of the jungle magic that they utilize in Thailand, and this is also true for Cambodia, even though I said that, yes, there is a jungle voodoo or whatever you want to call it, that does not use Buddhist ideas. That's true too. But a lot of the magic does use Buddhist ideas. Most of it does. Even if they don't explicitly say it, there's a sort of, I want to call it it's kind of the ambient sound. The ambient sound of all Thai magic, all Southeast Asian magic, broadly, we'll say, it has a Buddhist background. It just does. I know that's complicated, and I know that's not quite what Peter Jenks says, but for the most part, it's close enough to what he says, and I think it's true, and I think I can prove it. So basically, so herbs for Buddhist magic. Now, in the book, he shows an Ajarn who's a devotee of the 108 Lersi, so he's using a complete list. Well, the 108 is a magic number in Buddhism. So the rite has an underlying Buddhist nature, we would say. So one of the offerings is the severed pig's head. I'm not saying severed in a transgressive or animal sacrifice way. Obviously, this is Thailand, where you can go to the wet market and get pig's heads very easily. That's the kind of pig's head I'm talking about. They're cooked. They're given ritual candles, ritual offering, and they're put on what he calls a buffet style. So multiple Lersis can partake, but actually 107 of the Lersis are vegetarian. And only the tiger face Lersi is a meat eating deity. Now, people will be like, well, he's kind of like a Buddha figure. He is not supposed to do transgressive ritual action. But actually, this probably comes from the Chinese worship of the tiger king or the tiger uncle. It's a very important cult for Daoism. Very, very important. Very understudied, very underknown in the West. The tiger cult in Bangkok, the tiger temple, is very famous because the tigers are worshipped given salt pork. You will also find tiger temples in Singapore, Malaysia, a little bit in some in Taiwan, and probably in Hong Kong. There's probably one or two, but they probably don't. They may or may not feed them salt pork. I don't know. But it is considered to be ritual transgressive offering. Now, I'm not saying sacrifice. It's not about that. It's that they go and get pieces of meat and they feed them to the tiger statue. It's considered to be the powerful transgressive offering. I'm saying transgressive, but it's just meat because he requires that so he can defeat evil gods, evil ghosts, and black magic. So it's for a good purpose. That's what I'm trying to say. It is a ritually transgressive substance, but it's for a good purpose. Now, you're going to ask, why did Peter Jenks show the picture of all the severed pig's heads? Well, he explains it. He says, so the other Lersi can choose to partake, but they're all vegetarian, as I said, except for Tiger. But his retinue, remember I said that the AshtaBhairavas, the time kings, or the great lords, the wisdom masters, they expand in their mandala 8 times or 9 times each. Well, every one of those brings a small retinue of their own deities who are also ghosts, who can also be said to be ghost gods, or yakshinis, or dakinis, or pisahachinis. They bring the ferocious, unenlightened spirits with them when they are called to feast. So by offering the tiger Lersi, the pig's heads, it actually gives him power over those retinue spirits. That's the whole idea. It gives him power so they do not attack the practitioners. Now, as I said, a Ajarn, a Lersi, they will have one, maybe 1 or 2 or 3, or maybe they worship like a 30. There's a guy in the book that worships 37 knots. Now, that's a little different than the Lersi, but we're going to use that idea. So someone will be devoted to a particular grouping of them. That will give you most of your power in one way of thinking. Okay? But it's not exactly the same as worshiping a spirit like a banana fairy or a Pisahachini or there are lower there are lower Lersis. Like I said, that this is the King Lersi, the Brahmin Lersi with the third eye. He's usually depicted with a third eye open, but he's not the only one. There are lower spirits, like I just said, the Bhairavas, the Lersis, the wisdom kings, they bring with themselves smaller retinues of lesser deities. It's not a deity as in like a deity from heaven, but it's like an object of a host. That's exactly what they're called. They're hosts, kind of like demons, goetics, angels, could be either or, could be good or evil in our human conception, but they're not really either of those things. There is one who's very popular right now. I'm not going to say his name because people get really insane about like worshiping him and like doing weird magic with him. And I'm not saying it's not, I mean, I don't know. I don't practice that. So I don't know if it's viable or not, but I'm sure there's something. But for me, I prefer to stick with enlightened beings mostly. So the idea is like he is propitiated for worldly things. That is, I'm not saying it right, but you can go find his iconography. Just search Lersi on Google. It's right there. It comes up. He's holding a staff with a skull and a cord, a noose. And so he looks very much like Fudo, but a Thai version. So, but it's not Fudo, as I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there's an iconographic similarity. But it makes sense, right? Because they're all wisdom kings. They're all enlightened beings in a way, but he's not. He's considered worldly, and he's considered to be the king of black magic. So make of that what you want. He is depicted as very demonic looking. I'm saying looking. I don't personally practice that, just for the record. I just want to really be clear about that. But anyways, there are different ones. And it's like I said with the deer statue, the deer face. Some are popular right now and some are not popular because it depends on magic is very much goes in trends. There's like sometimes there is love magic's very popular. Sometimes certain cultural styles of magic, like people in the 2010s, they were going through like a hoodoo, Santeria, and voodoo craze. That was like super popular among all the different magicians, like all the people that are considered like OG in the occult community. They all went for like these what they would call Afro traditional religions, but I call them Afro-syncretic religions because they really are syncretic. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. So there are multiple different Lersi and there are multiple different spirits worshipped. And so not everybody draws their powers from the spirits. And in a Buddhist way, you're not really drawing the powers from the spirits, but of their attributes. Anyways, it's complicated. But of a lesser spirit, like that demon face guy I was talking about, you're not going to him for your power necessarily. You're going to him for worldly boons, wealth, black magic on your enemies, all of those things. So all everything that the human desire can contain, you can propitiate him. Although he is the king of black magic, so it's always transgressive. Now, a Buddhist Ajahn or Lersi is going to think of black and white magic in a very interesting way. As I said, Buddhist magic is distinguished by the use of herbs. But one of the ways that Buddhist magic for monks works is when they are there's a category of Lersi, which Peter Jenks lays out, that are amulet masters. And this is the multi-billion dollar industry throughout Southeast Asia. So I'm not just talking about like some out of the way jungle magic. I'm talking about like a very popular kind of idea of Thai magic that is circulated throughout all of Asia, East Asia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Indonesia, China. People spend thousands, hundreds of thousands. I think people have spent $1 million on an amulet. It depends on the fame of the monk who made it, the antiquity of the amulet. There's a whole category of different ways to understand it. Sometimes the amulets will need to be recharged. There are prescriptions for how to treat the amulet. It's very similar throughout Tantra. There are protocols you must follow. The amulet might not ever be able to be seen by someone else. Okay. The amulet might not ever be able to be touched by someone else. Okay. The amulet might not be able to go over running water. So if you have to cross a river, that's going to be a problem. Various things. It depends on the amulet, but certain ritual masters have in the past created very powerful amulets using very complicated rites. This is usually what the Buddhist monks do, like what the Ajahns and the Wats do at the monastery, like the powerful sort of sorceress ones. So one of the ways that people get rid of their amulets, because you're hearing me say, oh, there's this huge trade in both new and antique amulets, which is true. It's multi-billion dollars. But one of the ways is that regular people get rid of amulets is they bring it to the monastery to be, hey, Zach, what's up? Shout out Zach, Creative Equipment. Everybody go check out his channel. Zach is obviously a threshold saint. His seminal episodes on Tracy Twyman, we love those, as well as, I know he's kind of embarrassed about it, but I'm going to shout out anyway, his episode on Don Dada, which I thought was really cool. And I want everybody to go check out and subscribe to his channel, which I actually think has more subscribers than the Grey Lodge. But he is my brother in a way, so there's no shade, obviously, just a friendly, competitive rivalry. But he's got to buy me a drone, is what I told him. So we'll work on that, right, Zach? Got to plow some things in the winter to pay for it. So, anyways. Okay, so there's this huge trade in Thai amulets all throughout Asia, antique and new. Okay, Thai people bring their amulets to the carnal ground. Why am I calling the temple a carnal ground? Because in Thailand, and this is true for most Buddhist places in Asia, is that the temple also is a place for cremation. There are stupas that are cremation ground stupas. So even the monks get cremated there. So people will bring them and they will bury them, and the monks will also bury them, the amulets, in the cremation ground, in the stupa ground. So where the place, like where it's you, if you watch any Thai movie, you will always see this scene of a monk sweeping the steps of the wat, steps of the stupas, with a coconut broom. This is also a magical operation. I just want to point that out. Like, people might think it's really subtle. It's really like, oh, what is he doing? Like, he's just always just like a nice, peaceful monk. And maybe that is most of the time. But that broom, that coconut frond broom, is a very magical ritual technology, actually. It's used in cleansing. It's not just used cleansing in Asia, but it is very important for all kinds of Southeast Asian sorcery. It's actually also used in Trinidad and Venezuela and parts of Mexico and different parts of Central America. They will call it cocoa, and I know I said it really China, but I am China, so that's how it's going to come out. Anyways, but the point is that they utilize this coconut broom because coconut is a very lunar ingredient, so it's a very cleansing. The water is considered to be very pristine. It's also very, I won't derail this, but it's very Kabbalistic because it has the clear water inside. But that water is considered to be perfectly pure, like purified water. So coconut water is a very important cleansing ingredient. So a broom made of coconut husks is going to have that same cleansing property, nature. So I think one way to understand that is to, like, when you see the monk sweeping the steps of the stupa, I think one way to think about it is that he's cleansing the area for the prayers, because that's what the whole point is of having the sort of cremation grounds adjacent and or connected to the monastery, is that the prayers of both the lay people and the chanting from the monks goes into the earth. The earth is considered to be a goddess. Which goddess, you might ask? A Vedic goddess, but she's not really a Vedic goddess in the full understanding in Thailand. It's a more tantric understanding. So it is Bhumi. So Bhumi is the earth goddess, the Vedic goddess of the earth. But she's also a Mahavidya, a tantric goddess, a Dakini, who is called Bhuneshwari. You can hear her name is half Bhu, Bhumi, Bhuvaneshwari. Similar. That means earth. So the amulets that are recycled are, well, they're not, I haven't explained that how they get recycled, but when they're buried, they go undergo a kind of ritual preparation for their to be recycled, to be reborn. The amulet can be reborn, just like me, Wukong reborn, right? So the amulets can be reborn. So they get buried under the earth. They absorb the sound, right? This is very Buddhist, liberating the light from the matter, but they also absorb the element of earth, the priti, the foundational power, the foundation, the primordial ground. They are absorbing it non-dually at the crossroads between the carnal ground as well as the temple. So the monks will then dig up the amulets when they are making new ones. They will melt down because most of the amulets are encased in metal. Most amulets have a metallic figure, whether it's a deity or a nature spirit or anything, a demon. They will have metal in it, so they will melt down those old amulets after some time, after they have absorbed enough mantra and enough earth power. They will reutilize that metal for tantric or like Witsa purposes, for ritual purposes. Sometimes, so you're going to say, if you're really clever and you're really following carefully, you're going to say, well, Jin, didn't you say that the Buddhist style sorcery does not utilize corpse components or like ghosts or any of those demons that I sort of laid out a little bit? You're correct. However, the monks don't control like what amulets are necessarily buried in the wat. So in some ways, that is considered to be a very potent metal because it's a composite alloy. Not necessarily composite alloy elementally, but it's a composite alloy in a tantric way of thinking, is that it's combining various ritual technologies, including corpse, skull or blood or whatever is in the amulet itself. Some of them have liquid like mercury or different things in them, right? Or some kind of, there were placental fluid. Like that's one of the amulets. That's what the sort of thing is. And then you float different metallic particulates inside, different seeds, different herbs, different things. So when they get melted down, obviously they're an alloy. It's all the mixture of things. So some amulets are made of gold, some amulets are made of silver, some amulets are made of meteorite iron. If you follow me, you'll know that meteorite iron is the most important tantric metal for most kinds of tantra, both Indian and Tibetan for sure, and Nuwari. And but this also occurs in Thailand. So they will make frames for the amulets in meteorite. So, anyways, they will use village iron and different things to make it. Even they will recycle like pieces of old cars, different things. Like people will utilize different things. So the metal then becomes sort of a sacred metal because they're reciting the katas, the prayers, the Pali prayers over it. They're doing it on specific ritual dates. Usually, eclipses are very popular for making amulets. New moon days, full moon days, just like you would see in Western magic. So, but this also makes sense in a tantric way. Like this is exactly how you would go about performing ritual activities. So they basically melt down these amulets and they create new ones, but they don't utilize. It's really important to note they don't utilize like corpse components or anything like that in the new amulets. Those might be components of the old amulets that have been recycled, but they are not brought in as new amulets. Now, another really important and really interesting idea of the amulets themselves is part of the metal that goes into making the amulets is not just the old amulets. It is a composite mixture of what is called transgressive metals. This is exactly how it's discussed in Pali. I'm just forgetting the Sanskrit equivalent at the moment, but I'll remember. But so transgressive metals. Now, what is a transgressive metal, Jin? Well, so great you asked. A transgressive metal is anything that has touched corpses, anything that has been used in black magic, like meaning like there are kinds of ritual swords. Now, everybody knows that like I have a particular, well, not everybody. I mean, if you follow me on Twitter, you might know that I have a particular affinity for Indonesian ritual swords, which are called keris. Um, anyways, they have a very similar idea that are forged swords, usually made of meteorite or composite alloy. That's considered to be much luckier. So a composite alloy of 5 or 7 metals, and they will make ritual blades with a kata or a prayer or a specific mantra, different things. Sometimes they'll be in Chinese, sometimes they'll be in Pali, sometimes they'll be in the Khmer, like Cambodian script, sometimes they'll be in Burmese script, depends who makes it, right? So they're ritual, they're wands, but they're knives. They are knives. They are actual knives, but they are utilized in a way that a Western magician might recognize as a wand. But they're used also as like a whatever, the ritual blade of a magician. So it's both things. Okay. So those are also sometimes retired. And so those will also get melted down. So those might have been used for black magic or for different things. So those get melted down into new amulets. But not corpse, the coffin nails. So this is something again that relates very much to Latin America, Latin American folk magic, Brazilian like Kimbanda, all that stuff. They will utilize, this is Buddhist magic. They will utilize the transgressive metals like coffin nails that have touched corpses. And not just that, hinges from at the morgue when they like store the bodies before they get cremated. If they ever take off the hinges of those shelves, they'll use those different things. And they will also use pieces of the monastery. So as pieces of the monastery get replaced, maybe there's gold leaf that needs replaced, maybe there's gold leaf on the floor, or maybe there's a door handle. Well, wouldn't it make sense since that has also absorbed the ritual sound from all those decades of hearing monks chanting or the ritual power, those also get made into part of the amulets. So there are ritual, but so the filling of the amulet is really what changes. So they will use transgressive substances. So this is different than Tibetan Tantra. Tibetan Tantra is all about the synthesis. Tibetan Tantra would say we're going to use transgressive substances inside of our Buddhist magic. Whereas Thai magic tends to delineate it more. but they're only delineating it as a category of good or white magic. But when I'm saying white magic, I'm not talking about white magic in the totally Western sense. I'm simply talking about that all magic is sort of it's gray, but it is the what are you utilizing for ritual power that matters. That's really the distinction we're talking about. Buddhists don't worship ghosts. Like a monk is not going to worship ghosts. A monk is not going to worship hopefully a Pisahachini. A monk is not going to worship the wrathful sort of like demons of Cambodia. Hopefully, not like a bloodthirsty mountain imp or goblin or whatever. Okay, so they don't utilize those spirits. They utilize the power of Buddhist words, of Pali, and of their faith in Buddhism or the Lersi, the wisdom kings. So that's who they would draw upon. Whereas as what black magic would be considered, and in a Jarn, if they're a lay person like a Lersi, they can they can utilize these rites. It's not considered transgressive, but they will use like corpse components. They will do graveyard rituals. Now, when I'm saying graveyard rituals, that doesn't necessarily mean anything of what Western magicians tend to ascribe to it. It can also simply mean corpse rituals. If you've listened to me on Rejects, if you've listened to me on my own show, if you've listened to the Grey Lodge, we have done, I think, hours and hours and hours, like dozens of hours on spaces of these kinds of ideas of like corpse sadhana, of like all of these things. So it's not necessarily transgressive, as in like you're not killing anything, you're not hurting anything, but you might be utilizing the corpse ground to complete ritual activities. So in the second book, he talks about how even the monks will sometimes perform protective Buddhist magic. So the Lersi, the lay shaman, can then go and interact with the corpse. So this one famous monk at a Wat gives a story about how they go to a graveyard. A pregnant woman died. Right? She's pregnant. She died. There's a certain number of days that passed, and then there's a certain astrological condition. So you have to understand that these alignments don't happen very often. So this is why monks will get involved and go and do these things, is because then they can also not take advantage of, but they can also partake in the sort of what is created through the ritual. So in this case, they were creating ritual grade Mercury. There's multiple different ways to attain Mercury in Thai magic, but this is also true of Vajrayana. Okay, this is also true of Indian Tantra. This is pretty much true of all Asian magic. Mercury is a number one, very, very powerful component. How is it ritually prepared? How is it gotten? How is it attained? Excuse me. Well, this way is that they had to attain Mercury from a specific mountain on a specific astrological day. Okay, they had that. So they had to, one of the sadhanas is to have the corpse, to dig up the corpse of the pregnant lady, and then they have a very handsome man sit behind her as like a husband, like he's helping his wife. This is part of the sadhana. And they give her a mixing bowl, like a mortar and a pestle. And the corpse, guided by the man behind her, mixes the Mercury with the Buddhist herbs. So they're mixing it, the monks are chanting, the Lersi is doing his chanting, and they're like doing this thing. And then there's a moment where the quicksilver is then prepared after how many hours and how many, ritual components. So this is just one variation on it. This is not like, this is not the all encompassing. And Peter Gray has talked about, or not Peter Gray, shit. Peter Jenks has talked about this in interviews before, so I'm not trying to recycle his story. I just think it's a really interesting sort of way, and it's something that I recognize from both Daoism and also Tantra. Like corpse sadhana is nothing really new to me. So what I'm saying is like there's this utilization of these various technologies, including the cremation ground, the Mahasmashana, the Smashana, the place where the corpses are buried. And so even in Buddhist magic, the line is not super clear at all times. But the monks require this prepared ritual Mercury. I'm not saying it has to be exactly prepared like this. It doesn't. There are multiple different ways, as I said. just like in Tibetan Tantra. This is a very powerful kind of preparation of quicksilver for protective magic. So this is something that the monks at a particular Wat, if they're going to do this, as I said, the alignment of a pregnant woman dying at a specific astrological time, then another astrological time appears where you can perform this ritual. That's not going to happen very often. And this is exactly how medieval Tantra worked as well in India. They would wait for the corpse to appear, like if it's like a Brahmin son. This is a common sadhana thing. A Brahmin son will die of a lightning strike. The same in Daoism, same in Thai magic. There's sadhanas for all of this. I've seen them. So someone will die of this specific cause. Then they will ritually perfume, write bijas, the primordial words upon the corpse, and they will sit upon the corpse and do their prayer to their deity in hopes that the deity will either possess the corpse or that the deity will possess them and they can have kind of a dialogue, just like I said. Great, because that's what magical Buddhism really is all about, a dialogue. So, anyways, the whole point is so there's different ways, but Mercury is really important. Metals in general are really important. Ghosts are really important. The banana fairies are really important. The idea of this foreigner magic, meaning Chinese magic, not considered to be that powerful. Uh, Cambodian magic, from a Thai perspective, is considered very powerful. Laotian magic, considered very, very powerful. Burmese magic, considered to be the most powerful. And that's probably because Burma was closed off. So their wisdom traditions, their wisdom sciences are very similar to Thai stuff. And a lot of Thai people buy amulets made by monks in Burma or by Witsas. That's what they call it in Burma. So we'll have a whole episode on that. But I guess I covered all the things. Eros, do you have anything you want to say or, discuss about the book that I'm missing or?
Yeah, I just kept well, when I go into these kinds of things, I'm usually thinking like, I wonder how this is different from what I'm used to. And I think what really stood out to me the most would be like the I don't know how else to say it other than like the obsession with ghosts, which is really interesting because, here in the West, um if there was a ghost, the kind of common thing would be to ignore it, to pretend like it's not there. And I just think that it's a really interesting thing that's just so different from this culture and I would say just from Western culture in general. Um and it lends a lot of questions like how does uh, like what determines which ghosts get worshipped, um and then like when you contrast it to other spiritual practices, it's like um I mean it's just quite interesting, especially if it's the main um kind of source of spirituality. It's just this connection to the dead that I don't feel like we ever explore in the West.
My apologies for the music. I'm trying to play with it so we can have a little Thai beats. I'm still not haven't quite figured out the technological aspect, so I apologize to Eros. That's an amazing question, Eros. Thank you for raising that, articulating that point. So you have to remember that most Thai people don't have like advanced theological interests like us, like all of us in the Grey Lodge, right? So they're looking at the spirits or the ghosts of ancestors to simply exist in the cycle of samsara. They just are there. We don't know all of them. We don't recognize all of them. They just leave Fanta out. They do ghost altars. It's not really that they're named. And maybe this is actually a more interesting magical idea is that the ones that get named then become. they actually can arise in the world as like some kind of a force that is interceding, like an intercessory, excuse me, I couldn't think of the word, an intercessory spirit, like something that can actually intervene in the world, material world. So, but most people will have a relationship with like so that's more Thai, cultural Thai people. Now, Thai Chinese people definitely worship their own ancestors. It's a very important point. There's a lot of Thai films, TV shows, all of that, specifically about like this whole Thai Chinese sort of folk religious or Taoist framework that happens, especially in central Thailand in Bangkok region and all around Bangkok. So they definitely name their spirits according to like the ancestral name, and Thai people more so recognize the greater spirits. Like I was talking about, like Maynok, and there's and like if you the Peter Jenks book, he talks about multiple different ones. I'm just giving Maynok because I know that one. It's like ingrained in me since childhood. I've seen the movie. There's a million different movies from the 70s, from the 80s, from the 90s, from the 2000s. There's a TV series about it. Many series about it, I'm sure. I've seen one of them at least. So it's just something that I recognize. But so there's multiple different ones. And so maybe you can just say like the ones that are named are more powerful. But the wandering ghosts can also bestow boons. So that was just what I was trying to say about how the understanding of most Thai people towards wandering ghosts is that they don't really understand the nature of it, but they know it's not like you don't necessarily worship it. Like they'll do like a little prayer, they'll bow their head, they'll do like a kunkrap, like like a little thing with their hand. They'll make like the prayer hands, and they'll like bow before a ghost altar, and they'll say, "Oh, please don't, please don't attack us when we walk through the forest or walk down this alleyway or whatever." But it's not necessarily theologically complicated, and it's not necessarily in recognition that it's like our ancestor. It's really about like ghosts, like just ghosts that exist in the world that are rando. So but then you have the kind of like I guess the next degree of that, which is worshiping those ghosts as sort of some kind of boon giving deities. And so this obviously for me as a Buddhist, as a tantric, is very interesting because you are performing sort of dialogical acts, meaning that you are giving to a spirit in a transactional way, and you're praying to it, so you're giving it your energy, your attention, your perception, so you are allowing it to come into the world. Well, what are you praying to? If you don't know, then you could be praying to anything. It could be any kind of spirit, any kind of ghost. It doesn't necessarily have to be what you think it is. This is a big problem, right? And so a lot of Thais will, like, just even at the more superstitious layer, they'll recognize that. You cannot just like pray and give like every kind of offering to every kind of spirit, which is why they use Fanta, because it's kind of a neutral offering that resembles blood, but it's not blood, and it goes along with those vegetal offerings like oranges, jasmine flowers, and limes. So it can, and also they will give them like, sometimes they'll give them Chinese rice wine, incense, things like that. Like as I said, pungent and fragrant. You want things that are like accessible to the spirit worlds. So I would say that the ancestor stuff is primarily Chinese, but obviously it does play a role in sort of like an animistic, if you want to call it that, worldview, where you will believe like the ancestors go somewhere. Now, in a Buddhist way, ghosts are not necessarily the fullness of the person. They are shards or aggregates or shades, shadows of the person, like just a part of them. Maybe their desire, maybe their regret, maybe their sadness, maybe their anger. It can be a variety of other things. It can be a variety of things. But that is what is left behind. And that is what the spirits really are. They're aggregates. They are not necessarily complete sentient forces. Now, do they think they are? Yes, sometimes they do. And they can be very malevolent. As I said, the whole idea, and Peter Jenks explains this really well. Again, I just want to credit like where I'm getting some of this ideas, but obviously I know about this, but I just want to use a book. So it's not just me like sitting up here, like, I don't want to like, I'm not copying someone else's shit is basically the story, but I also don't want to just sit up here and just like riff. but I am riffing, obviously, but I'm riffing off of material. So he explains like the Buddhist stuff, the kind of Buddhist sorcery in particular is the protective layer. That is what gives people the empowerment to be able to kind of, not empowerment as in like you have to sit in front of the ritual master and like receive a secret teaching or anything like that. I'm just saying it gives you the protection to deal with these spirits. Now, should you be necessarily dealing with those spirits? Like, I don't know. Are you in a John? I'm not saying for Eros. I'm saying for people listening. Like, are you a ritual master? Can you can you not have sex for a year? Can you not have sex on like certain lunar days? Can you not eat meat on a lot of days? Can you avoid certain you have to, it's there's a degree of ritual protocols that everybody must follow. And it's not just about being shamanic or monastic. And I'm not talking about that even. I'm talking about lay practitioners. They have to adhere to certain protocols until they achieve, then the protocols may relax or change, but they will still have to do ritual preparations in order to tattoo, to make amulets, to perform rituals. They still have to follow the ritual guidelines, the protocols that they have to follow as wisdom masters or wisdom kings. Because the whole idea is to sort of embody that Lersi spirit. So the Lersi are not traditional, quote unquote, Buddhist deities, but they also are tantric deities. So they have to embody that sort of Buddhist nature. So I know that was kind of a roundabout way. So I wouldn't lament necessarily Eros like that they preserve like ancestors or ghost worship, but they definitely do it, but it's a lot simpler than it seems, I think. I don't know. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Do you have anything you want to ask me other than that? You don't have to. There's no pressure. I just wanted to, do this series, have a little fun, talk a little about, I love my, I love my Asian stuff. So, and everybody's kind of into the Thai stuff right now, and it makes sense. And I do know a lot about the amulets and that kind of stuff. I hope I did the first part. I hope I did the first book justice. Maybe we should have talked about, well, we can for the last 20. We'll talk about Esoteric Theravada maybe. And
Well,
sort of,
do you think that it's so popular because of like those movies that are coming out kind of well, I wouldn't say even recently, but like the past, I don't know, 5 years maybe, there's been a lot of movies coming out like this where there's um like a malevolent ghost or something that people are worshiping, and then it turns out bad for them.
well, all media is soft power, right? So Thai films are like Thai cinema is mostly famous for horror movies and action movies. So definitely a lot of Thai films abroad have inspired like what people in the Western tradition. There's no question about it. You can go back as early as like the early 2000s, and there were some Swedish black magicians who were talking about Thai necromancy and Thai magic, and they didn't really quite know how to access it, I think, but they had an idea that it was powerful. And then you see certain like in like maybe 10 years later, 2008 to 2010, you see a blog start to appear on the subject. Now, as I said, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, Thai magic in general, but Thai amulets in particular. There were already secret forums in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand itself, all over, especially among the Chinese diaspora, who usually can speak English as well as at least one dialect, if not two. So they were all communicating with each other already about like which which monk is going to what city and when, like what city, and they can visit him and get a blessing, or they can renew the power of their amulet. So this was already like very well known. And so I think it's a partly internet culture, to answer your question. I think this is partly why. I think this is why magic, the occult community, tends to think in phases and trends. It's very trendy. There are certain kinds of ideas that sort of pass through the sort of internet occult sphere and like sort of become part of the zeitgeist. I think Thai magic has had like several It's always been seen as very transgressive, very necromantic, which is true to a degree. I mean, like, let's not, I tried not to run away from it at all. But I also wanted to like emphasize its like Buddhist sort of historicity and like the sort of entwined nature of it with Dharma. But yeah, I think that the black magicians really bigged it up. They were like, yeah, this stuff is like super powerful. And it is very powerful. A lot of people recognize it. Like a lot of tantric Buddhists, like my kind of Buddhists who live in Southeast Asia, they are really into the Thai amulets, and they might not even be Theravadan Buddhists. But it's because it's a rich, powerful ritual technology. But like I said, there is so much of this stuff, like almost every single thing. And I'm not just talking about the Buddhist parts. I'm talking about the more quote unquote antinomian aspects. They are so similar to movements in Tantra, sadhanas in Tantra, texts in Tantra, Central Asian Tantra. So I think it's really important to note is that like it's not really different for anyone if people are listening and they're like, oh, I want to study like Thai magic. Well, there are some Westerners who are studying Thai magic. Peter Jenks is obviously a white dude. And there's some other people. There's Sheer Zed. He just wrote a book on inner traditions. I hope he'll come on my show and we can have like a really cool dialogue. I hope that he will. And, we follow each other on IG. So hopefully I can, get the mutual hookup. But he wrote a great book on it, and he's a Buddhist. Like he's very dharmic. Like he's like Dharma is number one, and I'm also a Dharma is number one. But I've become so much more flexible in what that even is and how I articulate it. So I think that's part of it too. Is like you have to look at it as a continuum. Like that is, I think, the difference. Like if you listen to like Sheer Zed, he didn't start out as a tantric Buddhist, like whereas I am. But I also am Southeast Asian. So there's this kind of interesting paradox, you could say, where I have to resolve, like, what is this kind of nature of the magic that or sorcery that we're looking at? Well, to me, it reads extremely tantric. I'm not saying that it's all done in like this high-minded Buddhist way where they're like, oh, we're praying to like green Tara to like liberate all mankind. No, this is sorcery. This is like, these are, I mean, he lays it out in very Theravada terms, Peter Jenks. He talks about like, why would you use magic in this nature, this samsaric world? And like Buddhism doesn't really offer any prescriptive ritual methodologies to alleviate bad karma, but that's not true. In Theravada, they do actually say dukkha, which is the Pali word for meaning cessation of suffering. So if you give up your cravings for like those negative emotions. That's really what the core idea is negative emotions, whether those are physical addictions or not. They can be, but it's more about your mind. So it's a cessation of that. Well, okay, so people will say, okay, that's too shamanic, Jin. I can't give up all my vices. Okay. So in Tantra, we would just say, okay, well, we have these other ways to clear it. Well, you don't even need Tantra. Even in the Mahayana system, there are mantras. So as I've always said, mantra recitation is really the root of all Tantra. This is how it's explained in every Tantra, high, low, no matter what. They also understand this. This is why I'm saying there's a Buddhist nature, a primordial Buddhist nature to all of this. There might be animistic qualities. There might be sorcery, jungle voodoo, as Peter Jenks calls it. Sure, of course, that is true. I know that for a fact. But I also know that all of this can also fit in like the complexity of what formerly was a very esoteric kind of Buddhism. And make no mistake, esoteric Buddhism was the primary kind of Buddhism of Southeast Asia for over 1,000 years. Indonesia as well. So it's not just like this animist sort of forest tradition of like shamans, and it's coming back into the atmosphere and people are just paying attention to it, and it's sort of like rediscovering. As I said in the book, Esoteric Theravada, she lays out how there was a Reformation, partly influenced by Calvinist and Jesuit missionaries, but also it was seen as backwards. It was seen as primitive. Are we going to fault them? No. The royal family must have had their own reasons for doing so. This happens in Tantra, like Tibetan Tantra as well. You will have certain monks do reformations of Tantra or Tantric Buddhism, of the monastery system, of the magical practices, because sometimes people go out of control. they start like worshiping every demon, and everything becomes a transgressive ritual of like sacrifice of this and this and this. No, it is supposed to be a completely controlled ritual methodology. That's the whole that's the whole point of Tantra, is that it is, you are exercising acupressure on reality, like very chaos magic. It's very similar to chaos magic, very, very similar. And Don Webb would agree. Its implications on the world using acupressure being the tantric ritual methodology. You're not doing things for transgressive reasons. You're not doing something just for the sake of transgressivity. You are doing something as part of a ritual grammar to access that power that you may need to successfully accomplish. You lose the plot when you start to perform ritual actions outside of that ritual grammar. This is something that I've discussed many times and over several years since I've started podcasting, is that it's not just about the ritual transgression. That's almost not the point at all. And if you get stuck on it, you're no better than someone who gets like a right-hand path person who only gets stuck on like the white light and like good angels. You're just as much of an artard. There's no difference. You utilize what you have to utilize in order to accomplish and perform the ritual to the correct result, or to the result that you desire or want or will, or whatever it is. So if you don't treat those things with according respect, then they're meaningless. Then you might as well not even use that ritual methodology, right? And there is ways to remix it. I'm not saying that they can't be taken out of their original sort of form or grammar, but it's, unless you're really highly accomplished, nobody should be remixing it. So I guess that's another component of it, is like there's this whole esoteric Buddhist background to Southeast Asia. Yes, they did have higher tantras as well. Havajra, I've talked about this on the show before, with Solar and with Neon Tiger, as well as CJ. I don't know if I talked about it with CJ on the last 2 episodes, but CJ and Solar have an episode coming up really soon on the show, and all about Buddhist Tantra, Buddhist magic, like Tibetan magic. Well, Tibetan Tantra, really. But yeah, we discuss all of these things. So we talk about how Cambodia was like a Hindu Buddhist country, just like Burma, just like Thailand, just like Indonesia, how they received this text called the Havajra text, which is a higher yoga. It's not the highest, but it can be. It can be taught in a way that is the highest, but it's not considered to be in the Sarma school or the what's called the New School tradition. It's not considered to be the highest text, but it doesn't matter. It's still one of the highest yoga tantras. Okay. So it's a very important ritual text, a ritual deity, and you can see his iconography all throughout Southeast Asia. Very common. And as Tiger said, who also has an art history background, the Havajra of Southeast Asia is depicted quite differently from the Havajra of Tibetan and Nepali Buddhism. Why is that? Well, the Nepali and Tibetan Havajra deity is depicted as being his jewelry is of the carnal ground. So he wears bones, he wears a tiger skin, just like the Lersis all wear tiger skin. That means you're greatly accomplished. It means you've overcome fear. That's how we would actually explain it in Tantra. The tiger skin, if a deity wears a tiger skin, they have overcome all fear. Okay. And so, meaning that they can also overcome all obstacles in the world, like all worldly obstacles as well. And so, but he gets depicted in Southeast Asia, Havajra, as wearing courtly garbs. So his jewelry is gemstones and gold and fineries and silk and that. And so it changes, but it's the same deity. It's just that from a transgressive deity, he becomes a deity that can be openly practiced. He's no longer just a carnal ground deity. He is a courtly deity. And this is even what it's called in iconography, courtly garb. So courtly garb Havajra or carnal ground garb Havajra. Can be either or. But Southeast Asia preferred this royal court Havajra. And why I'm bringing this up is because there's a sort of sequence of events that happened where it became highly fashionable to worship Havajra all throughout Southeast Asia. That does not mean, I know a lot of people online are very fascinated with the continuation of certain Shaivite and Vishnava and Vedic and so what we'll call broadly Hindu and tantric rites that still happen in Southeast Asia. And yes, that to a very small degree is true. It is true, but it's not really accurate. It's not really fully accurate. It's taking place in a syncretic Hindu Buddhist as it was always syncretic Hindu Buddhist. It was never just one of the religions. It was always Buddhist predominantly, and then you would have people worship like Shiva or maybe a form of the goddess, or maybe you would have them worship a form of the goddess as the banana fairy. That's one way to understand it from Indian Tantra. A Yakshini or a Pisahachini can be a form, even if they're unenlightened, even if they're ferocious and evil, meaning that they eat people. They can be seen as a form of the unenlightened goddess, the kind of Durga or Kali or Chandika. That's the name that I usually use when I describe it. Chandika, because that is the real tantric name. She's the one who's riding the lion. They can be seen as her, as like unenlightened little shards of her, husks, sheaths. That's one way to think of it. So you have this whole range of what people think is animism, but it actually fits perfectly within the Indian tantric framework. And so I think that's another big component, is that, and it's another thing that a lot of Western magicians get wrong about like the Thai magic and not just Thai magic, but all of Southeast Asian sorcery, is they'll say, oh, it's animism, it's this, it's like, oh, this is Hinduism. No, it's syncretic, but it's under the broad umbrella of Buddhism. And then there's offshoots, but it's also tantric. So as I said, I would like to, if I'm going to leave anyone on this series, like thinking about anything, I want you to think about how it's a continuum rather than piecemeal component parts that arose out of some syncretism between forest shamanism and Thai Buddhism. No. As we will discuss not next week, but in 2 weeks, when we do the episode on Burma and the Huitza, this direct transmission route from India, from the Bay of Bengal, the most tantric place where all the Tara Tantras are written, they transmitted something, whether it's Havajra, whether it's different cycles, whether it's AshtaBhairavas cycles, anything. And why not why I call them, but why tantras are called cycles and not just root text, why we refer to them as cycles, is because the root text is just one text within a greater cycle, a greater canon of works. So a Havajra, if you're going to say Havajra cycle, okay, you are also including the other texts that make the Havajra sort of more meaningful, more workable, and also more practical. Because the root text is very vague. It gives it's more on the nature of reality. It's much harder to utilize it can be utilized in a magical way, of course, but it can't just be utilized word for word from the text. You have to have kind of an experience with it. So it will include other kinds of tantras, other kinds of things, maybe focused on that deity. So that's what I'm saying when I say a cycle. It's not just the root text. It's the whole sort of this whole ritual manual can be broken down into little of different deities, different kinds of metallurgical workings. When we talk about Burma in 2 weeks, we'll talk about copper. We'll talk more about quicksilver. We'll talk about sky iron, which is meteorite, how this is one of the most important ritual technologies in all of Buddhism, all of Central Asia, but also in Southeast Asia. So yeah, think of it as a continuum. Don't think of it as singular. Don't think of it as syncretic, theosophical arisings. Think of it as more of continuations of some kind of primordial system that is coming out of Northern and Central Asia, that is related, that is interrelated, that is syncretic at its face and also at its core, but is not a syncretic religion. You're looking at Dharma, but in a broad way. So I think that's interesting, especially for the new aeon, when we talk a lot about, I know, Eros, you're not a big fan of the panpsychic universe. I'm sure we'll get into that next week when we talk about the Epiphanion. But as I always call it, I call it the hyperspace kingdom, right? So there's one idea that the hyperspace kingdom is the panpsychic universe. I never really thought about this until I saw your tweet, Eros. I'm just being honest. So it was very thought provoking, if not like just at least for me, generative. So I think that it's not quite the same thing, but I think I'm referring to it broadly as this, like, I'm saying that there's a like kind of broad interrelationship between the two things. So I'm not going to defend panpsychic universe, but I will go to the bars or go to the mat, as they say, for the hyperspace kingdom. But I agree with you that there are some maybe ontological and philosophical and metaphysical flaws. We definitely can get into that next week. But I don't know. I think that was I don't know. What do you think, Eros? Do you think that was like a good solid 2 hours of like time magic? I mean, I probably could have done better, but I tried to give it some flavor, give it some commentary.
I think it was so good. You were really in like a great stream of consciousness there. I personally think that you represented the book really well. And, especially for me, obviously I did read a lot of the book, but I didn't know much about time magic at all. I hardly know much about Eastern religion in general, except what I've learned from you. Um, I don't know. I really, really thought it was great. I thought this was a great episode. Um, yeah.
Okay, well, I feel honestly it means a lot to me. Legit, I'm not being funny or anything. I have been getting really bad nerves during lives, not just on our show, not just on Grey Lodge, and not on Saints because that's more intimate recording. But, like, sometimes on lives, like, last week, I got really, like, anxiety, and it's not just from last week because it's not related to anyone, it's not anything to do with online. I've had it before, and sometimes it comes and goes. So I'm honestly, and what I'm trying to say in a long-winded way is, like, I really appreciate that, Eros. Thank you so much for saying that. Thank you, everybody from the Grey Lodge, Zach, Dorian, Cassandra, Vanessa, Nick. I know Nick left, but thank you so much, boss, for coming. Of course, we'll shout out Solar Exile. I don't know if he's going to put up his Substack soon. I hope he does, but anyways, you can follow him in the links in the show notes, as well as Eros. I'm going to let Eros plug her channel, but yes, her channel link is also part of the co-host, as she is part of the co-host. And our other brother, Doctor Dr. William Birkin, Joshua the Branch, who has now changed Twitter handles again for the second time since I've known him. So it makes it so much more complicated. Anyways, I need to update his link, but if you need to follow him, you can message me or anyone else and we'll make sure that you get his current link. I think I did actually put it on the title card for the show, so hopefully that will be there. And also you can listen to him on my show on many episodes, as well as channel KOK, and as well as Symbolic Studies, Mario. So, because he does a lot of work with him. So you can really follow all of us. If you want to follow me, Jin, at Wukong Reborn, WUKONG Reborn, you can, or at Threshold Saints. Now this is obviously, if you're watching the show, you know that our YouTube changed from the True Grey Lodge to its current incarnation. We'll call it the Eternalist version at Threshold Saints, because it made sense. And I also had the other two boys agree with me. It wasn't just a Jin unilateral decision. I wanted to make sure that, everybody felt included, that it's just that it's easier for me to do admin work and to sort of maintain one channel under one show banner, but it's really two shows. So the Grey Lodge is really not Threshold Saints, but it is part of it. So everybody who appears on it, a lot of them have appeared on my show. Eros episodes coming up. Obviously, I have a long-standing collaboration with the other two. And I love working with Eros, for the record. And even though it was just her and I tonight, and she had to kind of like listen to me riff and do stream of consciousness as I tried to dissect a book, which, sometimes is successful and sometimes probably not. But I greatly appreciate her and all of her insight and wisdom on astrology. I've learned so much from her. as well. And I hope that I represent like the Eastern tradition. Like, even if I'm not perfect as a person, at least I can, hope to present the philosophy in a coherent and like stable way. So thank you so much, Eros. And I want to just shout out, I'm going to let Eros say her last thing, but I want to shout out Cassandra, because Cassandra also obviously has an Etsy store, has her own content, has her own channel, Spotless Mind Tarot. Go follow it on IG. Go follow Cassandra. I see you, Cassandra, being active on IG. Don't think I don't know. Anyways,
She is literally, I've known a lot of tarot readers. She's the best that I've ever met.
Cassandra is like, she is legit psychic. Like, there's no other way to describe it. Like, I have no other words. I just am like, speak and clock things. You have to be really careful how you phrase it. You have to just be like very like, I'm not saying like secrets. I'm saying like she would, like, we would talk sometimes and it would be like she would just kind of like pick up like the subtlest things, and I wouldn't even imply it. I wouldn't say it. She just know. She's
I
like,
just, yeah, and I love how she brings so much like astrological stuff to her readings. I mean, especially for me because I'm so astrological. I'm far more astrological than I am like into tarot. And and it's just funny because she'll give me a reading and it like really just matches up with my upcoming transits, and it's like just I just really like it. I think she's really great.
as I always tell you, Eros, like astrology, Kabbalah, tarot, those are all the same thing. It's just at what layer do you understand their interaction to be? There's like very normie ways to understand their interaction, and then there's very holistic ways. When I did Cassandra's episode, I know both of you are waiting for your episodes to come out. But when I spoke with Cassandra for my show, she definitely emphasized how holistic her approach is. It's like she does a little intuitive, she does a little bit of the astro, and she does like, I mean, obviously it's foundational to like the thing, but it's all, she weaves it all in together is what I'm trying to say. So um, yeah, I agree with you. Is that she, because she studies Kabbalah, and that's really, it's that's kind of her fundamental. I would say that's the linkage. That's why I always try and give you both. I try and sneakily Eros teach you Kabbalah by giving the planet the Sephardic name as well as the planet together. And I've tried to do this since the beginning of my podcast career, probably not successfully, but you're smart enough that you obviously pick up on it, and like you kind of are conversant in my way of explaining astrological things using the Sephardic words only. So yeah, we've got a great crew. We really do. And it's been really wonderful to get to know Eros, but just like to continue on with the Grey Lodge on our new adventure on YouTube. And like for me to host lives, like people might think, oh, you've done like 10 million lives. And I have done, Nick and I have done a lot of lives, and I've done a lot of lives on other shows. But to host it is a little different, as Eros knows. And to be live while you're hosting it is in itself like a lot more daunting. Not that we get like 10 million views. Of course, if they, 10 million people want to listen, that's fine. But um I mean, that's pretty much it. Well, I'll let it be there, but and I'll let Eros plug. But I want to say, to end, is that yes, you can find all episodes of Threshold Saints, every single one, all 110 right now, I think, are on YouTube as well, on our YouTube channel. But you can also follow the show at thresholdsaints.substack.com, at IG at Threshold Saints, on Twitter at Threshold Saints, and I have so much upcoming. It's like unbelievable. And I'm not just talking about that big thing with Eros that her and I will be doing, but it is also like I just have so many episodes, and I'm very excited and very lucky that people have given me their time and their friendship to be able to pursue the show as a kind of meta magical, Kabbalistic, chaos magic, Dharma working. And that's what it is. And so obviously I would never monetize my show simply because of that reason. It's my hyper sigil on the aether wave. And I've carried everyone with me, like Zach said, love to the saints. I'm going to put it up on screen just so it's like forever. There you go. Love to the saints. So that's really what it is. It's about like, yeah, we recognize everybody as a saint and keep it moving because we're all on the threshold. We're in the liminal space. So Eros, please just give your YouTube channel. It is in the show notes, of course, and I highly recommend everybody to check out her interview. She's interviewed all three of us from the Grey Lodge: me, Jin, Solar, Exile, Joshua, the Branch. So maybe I should interview Eros. Maybe I should interview Eros on her channel one day or on the Grey Lodge. That'd be cool too. I know Solar wants to. So, anyways, Eros, please plug your YouTube channel, which is a phenomenal channel. You're a brilliant mind. Your astrological takes, your ability to think discursively on your feet is bar none, really. And yeah, I just for being like the fourth pillar, I really appreciate it. And thank you so much.
Yeah, I feel like my YouTube channel doesn't have a lot right now, but it has a handful of stuff, and I am working on 4 different videos like concurrently right now, which is insane, but I just kind of let myself be led where I'm led in the moment. Um and I try to just stay disciplined. But yeah, I think that those interviews are really good. I also interviewed Ethan Indigo. I highly do recommend checking them out. It's content that I would want to watch, you know. And just this was an awesome episode. Thanks for doing this because you know I think that it's hard to like learn these things on your own, especially if you're Western. You know what I mean? To break into those other um kind of spiritual practices or whatever that are so different. It's really nice to have a bridge, and I don't know. I can't believe that you just winged all of that. That's kind of insane, but it was great, and thanks a lot for teaching us all about it and being that bridge. And I really look forward to the next one. Oh, and then yeah, I guess I'm supposed to be plugging my YouTube channel, which is Aerosup. Um, and yeah, thanks for having me on, Jin.
Anytime, you're always welcome. I mean, you're a Grey Lodge, a co-host, so you're always welcome. And everybody's content, like production, it goes in phases. So there's really, I think that's what you said. It's like I will also work on episodes concurrently a lot of the time. Sometimes it drives me insane. Sometimes I'm more disciplined like you are. I hope to be anyway. And yes, absolutely. Check out that Ethan Indigo interview is phenomenal. Of course, Eros is like a phenomenal content creator. I think so, and I definitely think her channel is worth watching, and like worth watching for what's going to be upcoming as well, not just the content that's on there. And yeah, I mean, I used to do these for Aeon of the Daughter, like 3 or 4 hours, just me riffing stream of consciousness on Gnostic, Tantric, Kabbalistic ideas. And that's how I like to usually do it. But like when the boys are here, obviously I want them to, and when obviously you're here, Eros, as well, I want it to be a collaborative meta magic between all of us. But I think I not to speak highly of myself in any way because I don't really like I'm not like a egoic person really, like the way I walk through the world. I do believe though that it does take someone who is like technically Hapaborean. Like everyone's Hapaborean, as I always say, but I'm technically Hapaborean. It does kind of require someone like me. Not that Westerners can't do it themselves, of course. I don't even speak Thai that well, okay? I fully admit it. I don't even speak Chinese that well, my own language, or Bahasa. Actually, I speak Bahasa pretty okay, but anyways, the point is like I think it takes someone who is actually embodied Hapaborean to sort of dissect and translate the ideas. I also don't practice a conventional like Western religion. So a lot of my preconceptions really arise from Tantric Buddhism, which is a benefit, I would say, an asset in terms of looking at Tantra, because I'm able to look at it more holistically, like this kind of a complex, a continuum, rather than like a piecemeal thing that doesn't make any, that's incoherent. Because to me, it does read very coherently, pretty much. Like, of course, I don't understand everything. I'm not a Theravadan Buddhist. I don't speak Pali. There's things that I wouldn't understand inherently, but we have all of the same practices, with the exception of magical tattooing has almost been totally lost in Central Asian Tantra. So hopefully when we discuss Witsa in 2 weeks, which is the Burmese, which is I'm gonna have a separate title card, different keynote, different image. It's a different system, but it's very overlapping. Just like Peter Jenks talks about in the first part of this book, it's inseparable from Thai magic. It's all Vidyadhara. That's how you have to think of it. It's connected by the Sanskrit words. So Vidyadhara is the sort of the complex wisdom scientists all over the jungles. We're going to be looking at Burma, and I think that'll be really interesting. We also have a Burmese member in our group chat, Donlander. I just want to shout them out. Donlander, if you are listening to this, obviously in recording, please note that, yes, partly definitely inspired by us, like our conversations, and then also you in the group chat as well. So Burma, everybody look out for that in 2 weeks. Obviously, next week, Apophenion. So we're going to bring it hot and hard. That's what I'll say, because I'm going to allow, they can go as discursive as they want. I was thinking it was being more fun last week, and maybe that was my mistake, my sort of Klapothic perception. I took it more as I was going to be less serious about the text and more playful in terms of it's Peter Carroll, so take it all speculatively, which of course I'm going to do in next week. But I'm going to allow the space to be more free flow, and like people can give their criticisms, and I, won't be so sensitive. So hopefully I won't have any anxiety next week. I don't think I will. I think I'm working through it. And a big part of it is because everybody is pretty supportive of me in our little group chat, in our little circle of misfits. So shout out to the Gray Lodge. And yeah, thank you guys all so much. Obviously, do sadhana, psychic self defense, try and practice non duality, try and practice bodhicitta, and loving kindness for everybody in the world, even if they're a fucking asshole. And also, I'm not saying about that about anyone, I'm just saying, just an important idea. And also, yeah, you can appraise all wisdom science through those principles, but the most important principle, perhaps, is the middle pillar. So, if you want Jin's Kabbalah remix, go to the middle pillar. It can lead you straight to Dap. It can lead you straight to Keter. It can lead you straight to the hyperspace kingdom. So, that being said, we're gonna call it, and everybody have a fucking great night.